Hello, dear book dragons. It's July, and I've read 11 books in June, so that's quite a lot for me because several of them are quite thick actually. But I have much more time to read now that I'm not actually working anymore. So I have my book picnics every day, and so I'm glad that at least this time of no working is in the summer, so I can have a lot of rest and be outside. But I'm just going to dive into the books. The first book I read was The King's Messenger by Susanna Kearsley, who is now a favorite author of mine. I started reading her books maybe 2 years ago and loved every one of them. Most of them are set in our time and in history, but this book is only in the 1600s. It's 1613 and it starts in London. It's a book about a young lady, Phoebe Westaway, who is the daughter of daughter of a scribe and a king's messenger. What's his name? Ooh, Andrew Logan. And he's the king, who is James the First of England, but James the James the Sixth of Scotland, but James the First of England. So I'm not sure, but I think this book is set a little bit earlier than the other books I read by her. I haven't checked. But you will meet people in this book that you also meet in her other books, like The Winter Sea, which was the first one I read. So you meet the Moray family and I've forgotten his name now, but a captain. And these are people who have lived for real. The only people that are made up are the actually head people in this book. Phoebe and Andrew are not people who has lived, but the people around them, the historical people, are true. And there were king's messengers, and he is sent to find Sir David Moray to interview him about the Prince Henry's death. He was kind of his step-in dad because this young prince never lived with his parents, and they want to know why he died. The queen wants to talk with him, and the king wants to kind of interrogate him and blame everything that's happened on him, even if he does know it actually isn't David's fault. So this is a book about that, but maybe mostly about the relationship between Phoebe and Andrew, and the relationship to David and her father and the young boy that comes with them from Scotland down to London. And it was I always love her books. I give it 4.8 stars. I found Phoebe a little bit annoying in the beginning, but she grew on me and she grows as a person, and she does realize that Andrew isn't the annoying brute that she think that he is. You get to know why she thinks these things, but in the beginning, when you don't get it, it's just find her really annoying. So that was kind of drawback. But otherwise, I really, really love this book. I love all her books. So I can read. I really like historical romance with twinge of magic, because Andrew can see people's death, kind of, or future. Mostly, no, their death. He can see when they're coming. So it's a bit of magic in it as well. Really recommend. And then I read The Forgotten Beasts of Eld by Patricia McKillip. And if you remember, I read another book by her last month, which I borrowed at the library, in the Forest of Serre, which I really loved. So I ordered this, and another book that I will come to later in this video. And I love these as well. This is such a beautiful, well-written story about this young woman who is a magician. She can talk to magical animals and draw them to her, but she lives alone in this secluded castle up in the mountains. She doesn't meet any other people. Her father, who she grew up with, has died, and but suddenly this young soldier arrives with a baby who is her mother's sister's son, so her cousin. Say, please take care of this young boy. He's in danger because he's the son of a king, and she obviously she doesn't want the baby first. Because she doesn't know humans. She doesn't know how to take care of a baby, but reluctantly she does and learns to love. And it's just a beautiful story about love and friendship and trust and magic, and it's kind of dark in its places, but never too dark. Well, there are some things that are quite horrible, but yeah, it's not too horrible for me, so definitely not for you. Because I'm easily scared. Yeah, so this is, and it's so poetic. 5-star read. Definitely 5-star. And I'll go on because there are many books to talk about. And the other one is the duology, While the Dark Remains by Joanna Ruth Meyer, and When the Light Returns by Joanna Ruth Meyer. And this book, the second book, just came out this spring. And Joanna is also a new favorite author of mine that I got to know this year. And when this book came out, and you can't find it at a library, even I'm really trying to get books from the library nowadays. So I decided to buy them because I really enjoyed her other books. And the ones I read before are more like storybooks based on old stories. Well, this is a new epic fantasy, so it's kind of different. And it's about Brynja, who lives in this big fantasy world. Well, they live on an island. She has been captive of a horrible, crazy king for years, since she was a little child, and she's still very young. I'm not sure, 16, 17 maybe. And so it is a dark book, especially the first one. Well, the second one is dark in another way, but it's still lighter. And you get to see her like in 2 times, when she has run away from this horrible castle and what happened when she got there. So it's like you see then and now and then and now until they kind of meet. And you can't put this book down. I mean, it's for every chapter is, oh, I have to read something more, I have to read something more. It's very compelling. I would say this is kind of like young adults when it comes to love story, but it's also very dark. So somewhere between grown up and young adult, maybe. And it's a very interesting fantasy world. And they're like on this island, there are like 3 kingdoms, you could say. The kingdom where she's captive, and when she ran away, she freed a princess who also was a captive, and she demands her to take her with her. And so they go home to this, I've forgotten her name, it doesn't really matter, but yeah, she goes to live with this princess and kind of still very, very traumatized. But both of them, of course, want to have their vengeance on this horrible king. The problem is that Brynja is in love with the king's son, Ballast. I know these names are very Nordic, like Brynja means chainmail in Swedish. And Saga, that's the name of the princess, means story. So there's many of these Nordic names, more maybe like Icelandic than Swedish, because Brynja is very Swedish and Saga is Swedish, but some of the names you can hear, okay, this is more Icelandic, because of course that's much more older Nordic language than Swedish has evolved to. And I guess. Anyway, it's just a really, really good. I don't want to talk too much about it. I don't want to tell you too much about it. But they have these. But the interesting thing is that in one part of the land there is like this almost elf-like people. They live for hundreds of years. They all have magic, and really, really strong magic. And they don't have gods. They have like ancestors that they believe in. While on the other hand, on the other side of the country, where people don't have magic, they believe that these ancestors are gods. So it's kind of different. And these people on the west side that don't have magic, they were cast out of this first society because they were born without magic. There was something wrong with them, so they, for some reason, many 100 years ago, were cast out of the society. So that created two very different societies. And then this third one, where the evil king is, I think they came from the mainland and arrived there, and then don't believe in the gods at all. So it's three very different kind of lives. So that's a very interesting political and magical and fate-based story. And yeah, I really recommend these. I assume I gave them 5 stars. Yeah. Well, I wrote 4.8 on the first one and 5 on the second. I did like the second one more. It's a little bit less dark, but it's also much more magic going on. It's a lot of action, so many things going on. And yeah, just read them. They're really, really good, epic fantasy with such an interesting magic system. So read. And then I had been reading during the whole month, little here and there, 3 plays by Sophocles: Antigone, Oedipus the King, and Electra. And this was for this book club. This classic book club. And these are plays, so you just read what they say. Really, you don't really get this vision of what are happening. You just read their words. So I don't get as involved in them as I would if they were written like a book. But it was really interesting to read, and interesting to think how long time ago this was written. That's really amazing, actually, to think these plays were written over 2,000 years ago, I think. 500 BC, so that's more than 2,000 years ago, and 2,500. That's so fascinating. Oedipus, of course, I know the story of Oedipus because I read about them in other books of Greek stories. So that was easier to get along with, but I didn't really know Antigone or Electra, so that was a little bit more difficult to understand. But I'm very interested now in to read like a fantasy book about Electra, which I know there exists one. So I really want to read that. and maybe read this again after that. I mean, they're very short, so it doesn't take very long to read. It's difficult to put like a 4-star or anything because it's so different. But I just put a 4 because the writing is obviously really good. And there's still plays made of these, so they're classics. And oh yes, I just want to show you before I go on. I'm so really pleased with this page with all the beautiful stickers that I have now. And then I read a Lucinda Riley book, The Last Love Song. So this was written before she became famous as Lucinda Riley, because she died a couple of years ago. And when she did become famous with her Seven Sisters books, it was under this name, but this book was written before that and under another name. So now, after her death, her son has kind of modernized some of these books. So last year there came another book, and now this year this book came. And I really enjoyed it. I mean, I always loved her books, but I kind of get a little bit annoyed that I can see very quickly what's going on, who murdered who. I mean, it's not really a murder story, but there's, in the beginning, you get to read about a person being in prison and are just being released, and reading about this concert where they wondering if this big star is going to show up or not. So that's kind of just the start. And then you go back in time to the 70s, with this young girl on Ireland, and a young musician who she falls in love with. She has very strict parents, and they don't know anything about their love story. And in the end, she follows him to London without. Well, actually, she was thinking of going with him, but couldn't really cope leaving her family. I can't explain everything, it's kind of complicated. And she has a cousin who is very rich but very alone. So we also follow her, Helen, and what's the name of this? Oh, the Sorcha. I guess you say Sorcha. And Don, I think. Con is the musician. And their love story is kind of forwards and backwards a bit. They come to London. Of course, it takes a while before he finds a band he can play with. There's a lot of intrigues in the band, and because he's actually a better musician than the lead singer. So it's a lot of going on in that. Another young man in this band who could follow him a bit, and he's so creepy to read about because he's obsessed with this girl from childhood. So again, Lucinda Riley writes about someone obsessed, a man being obsessed. And the last book was also about obsession, and it's so creepy to read about it. I was like, why? This is a much lighter book than that other book, but still I was like So if you, like me, don't like reading about obsessive creepy men, don't read this. But if you're okay with it, I can recommend it, definitely. It is really interesting, even if I, as a reader, has read many books. More and more I can really see what's going on, what's going to happen, and it's kind of okay, right? If it's good writing, if you get pulled in, it is okay. But I still like, it would have been better if it wasn't so obvious. So I gave it 4.5, but now when I think about it, maybe more like 4.2. Doesn't really matter so much. And then I read something totally different. I read Blackmore by Julianne Donaldson. I needed something cuter. And this is set in, look at how beautiful it is. This is set in 1800 something, I guess. I read this in Swedish because, yeah, I didn't actually know it was in Swedish because the name is in English. Yeah, yes, it's set in 1820s, in the 1820s, and this is a young woman, Kate, who, since she was a really small child, wanted to visit Blackmore, who is her neighbor's family home. And she's never been allowed to go. And her sister, her older sister, and her mother are notorious men eaters. So their family is kind of in shame. So that's one of the reasons why she hasn't been invited. And there is some kind of mystery that we as a reader don't know about in the beginning, but you get to know more and more while you read. But it's kind of obvious that she's really fond of this, her neighbor, a young man who is now the owner of Blackmore, because his father is not alive anymore. And even if he's inheriting it on his mother's side, no, it doesn't matter. He finally brings her to Blackmore, and it's kind of spooky, by the sea, a big place. And her mother said, okay, you can go and you're allowed to go to India, because that's what she really wants to go. You can go to India if some of 3 people, or have gotten 3 people to ask you to marry you and said no to them, which is really cruel. But she's so desperate, so she agrees to this, which of course puts her in a little bit strange situations. And when she arrives at Blackmore, she realizes she's still not really welcomed by this young man's mother or sister. And the sisters, they have been good friends since they were small, but they have been estranged for a while. So it is kind of a sad story, but still also very sweet. It's this love story, and she doesn't really realize that she's in love with him. That kind of grows on her during the book. It's just a really, really sweet love story. So I gave it 4.5 stars. So a lot of 4.5 stars this month. And yeah, so I recommend it if you like some 1820 book to read. And then I read kind of a cozy Asian book, cozy Japanese literature by Michiko Aoyama, Hot Chocolate on Thursday. And he or she has also written What You're Looking For Is in the Library, which I read last year, I think. And I was first a little bit disappointed because I thought this book would be kind of in this cafe the whole time that we would. But as in her other book, you first follow one person, and in the next chapter you follow another person who you met in the first chapter. So every chapter is a kind of a new story, kind of. And the first person is the young man who works in this cafe and has fallen in love with a young woman who comes every Thursday and orders hot chocolate. So that's why it's called Hot Chocolate on Thursday. And most of the stories are set in Tokyo, and some of them are set in Australia. And this is really sweet, a really sweet book, and also awaked a lot of emotions in me, especially one story at least. And I gave it 4.5 stars. Yeah. Oh, well, I haven't written anything more than I just said. So if you want to read some cozy, I mean, it doesn't happen so much. These are just slices of life, as they usually are in this kind of books. Rumination, relationships, things that people are waiting for. And yes, I said, as you follow the next person, but sometimes I was a bit confused in the beginning, but who is this person from that chapter? I wasn't really sure, but then I just let that go and got with the flow and really enjoyed it. And then I read something totally different, Tell It to the Skies by Erica James. And if you look at this book, it looks like a really cozy romantic book set in Italy, doesn't it? It is a romantic book, and it's partly set in Italy, but it is actually a really dark story. So it's about Lydia, who in the beginning of the book is a little bit older, living in Venice, and she gets hurt and has to stay at home. She has like a dead husband's daughter, who is a young woman now, and he really wants to take care of her, although she can't really move around so much. And for some reason, I don't remember why she. Oh yes, because in the beginning of the book, she's out on town and seeing a tourist that she really recognizes, and that really shocks her, and that's why she felt, because she was so shocked recognizing this person. And then we go back in time to the 70s in England, in Yorkshire, where she grew up first with her parents and a little sister, but her father dies. I think he's already dead when we get to back in time. And her mother is depressed and not in a good place, and which ends in her mother's suicide. And it's so dark there, because as a child she assumes very strange things. She thinks it's her own fault for some reason. So she and her sister, and they're really young, get to go and live with their grandparents, who they have never met in their life. And they're so strict and horrible to her, especially to her. They, for some reason, really love her little sister, who's very sweet and shy and don't speak very much. She's, of course, also traumatized. And so Lydia gets the blame for everything. And it's both physical and emotionally abuse. So much abuse. So it's a dark book, but also so well written and so interesting. I just, whatever. I like little abuse. And her grandparents are part of some really strange religious kind of sect, I would say. And but there are grown-ups around her who are really sweet to her. So there is another lady in this sect who is really nice to her. There is this ice cream man from Italy who's lovely. And there is a boy at school who they become friends, and they become in love with each other when they grow up, and they have a really strong bond to each other. He is also an orphan, and it's just wow, it's so good, but so sad and heart-wrenching. So if you're up to it, I'll say read it. It's so well written, and yeah, I don't want to say more. I mean, there are reasons why she leaves everything and goes to live in Italy. And this this is sweet ice cream man who helps her come to Italy. Um, yeah, I don't want to say more because there's like some odd things going on. I don't want to spoil that, but just read it if you're up to it. Read it. And that was also a 5-star. Well, I wrote 4.8, but I changed my mind. It's a 5-star. Then I needed to have a respite from dark books and read some sweet fantasy. So I read the other Patricia McLeod book, Alphabet of Thorn, and this, so good. 5-star from me. I must read all of her books. I mean, her writing is so easy to read, but it's poetical. It's really, I can't describe it. This is about a young girl, an orphan, who lives in. She's a transcriber. She's a translator. She's grown up in this royal library. In the underneath the castle is this huge library, and it feels like it's in the same world as in the Sarah book, because it feels like I recognize the name of the country, but I'm not sure. Yes, in the 12 crowns of rain, which means that like 12 countries that come together in this reign. And she likes her life. And in the beginning of the book, a friend of hers says, "Oh, I'm collecting a book by the magicians. They have this school of magic in a castle, in a forest just outside the castle, over near." And she drags her along, and because she doesn't want to go on her own. And they meet this young wizard just by the forest, and he gives them the book, and she immediately, her name is Nefente. I really love the names in this book. They're so different. She's named Nefente because the first child before her who was brought in to the librarians was named something on M, so now the next name was something on N. And this young wizard is called Born. Well, he falls in love with her immediately. She doesn't really take him so seriously. It was like, well, she really likes him, but feels like, oh well, he will get over me in a while. He will be interested in something else. As a reader, so well, maybe not. He seems really interested in her. And there's also another, a scolder who really likes her as well and liked her for years. But she gets obsessed by this book. No one of the magicians can say anything magic about it, so that's why they want to translate it. And she gets more and more obsessed by this book. It's written in thorns. Some things that she writes are difficult to understand. Sometimes it's like, what does she mean? But it doesn't really matter. At least in the beginning, because they were talking about fish. I was like, what are these fish? But yeah. Yeah. So, and then we also follow the young queen of this country, who seems a bit uninterested in ruling, and so she's still mourning for her dead father. But the head mage in the castle gets this feeling there is danger coming to this country, and she can't understand what it is. So we get to follow these people, and at the same time we get to read the story that Nefente is reading, which it takes a while until you understand that. But It's about a king and a mage thousands of years ago. So you get to follow their story. They're growing up, they're being in love with each other. And takes a while to understand everything, how everything's connected. Such a good end. Gorgeous, everything wrapped up so lovely. And this magic school is so cool with this forest with a lot of magical beings and this floating magical island, floating magical school. There's so many interesting details. Yeah, you have, if there's something you have to read, you have to read something by Patricia McKillip. If I would choose from these two books, I would